Hello everyone, my name is John. Welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to be talking about something that's just so egregious and so upsetting. You know, when you do someone wrong, that's one thing. But when you do wrong to a child, or in these cases, babies, that even makes it more egregious. It's better a millstone be tied around your neck and you cast into the sea than to do harm to one of these little ones. And that's exactly what Nestlé did. And we're going to talk about it in this video. In 1981, at the peak of one of history's most notorious corporate scandals, Nestlé's infant formula marketing was killing 212,000 babies per year, not from contaminated products or factory accidents, but from a systematic marketing campaign that convinced mothers in developing countries to abandon breastfeeding for expensive formula mixed with contaminated water. Between 1960 and 2015, this marketing strategy killed an estimated 10.9 million infants. This is the story of how corporate profits became more important than infant survival. Nestlé is the world's largest infant formula manufacturer, and throughout the 1960s and 70s, the company aggressively expanded into developing countries with marketing campaigns that portrayed formula as superior to breast milk. They targeted the world's poorest mothers, those who could least afford formula and often lacked access to the clean water necessary for safe preparation. A rigorous 2023 study by researchers at UC Berkeley and the University of San Francisco analyzed over 2.6 million births across 38 countries. They found that Nestlé's entry into infant formula markets directly caused infant mortality to increase by 27% among households without clean water access. At the peak of the controversy in 1981, this translated to approximately 212,000 excess infant deaths per year. The mechanism was simple and deadly. Mothers mixed expensive formula powder with contaminated water, creating a disease vector that killed babies who would have survived on breast milk. Nestlé's marketing strategy was designed to undermine breastfeeding during the critical window when mothers established milk production. The company's own annual reports from the 1960s revealed their strategy. From their 1961 report discussing their Lactogen brand in South Africa, increased sales of Lactogen reflect the growing awareness amongst African races of the need for improving the nutrition of young children. From their 1969 report, the rising number of births in maternity hospitals makes it easier to reach mothers. The medical staff there is more likely to influence mothers with regard to the food most suitable for their babies. The tactics were systematic. Nestlé provided free formula samples to hospitals and new mothers, often distributed by saleswomen dressed in nurses' uniforms called milk nurses. They sponsored healthcare worker training and flooded developing countries with advertisements claiming formula provided superior nutrition to breast milk. The strategy exploited a biological vulnerability. If mothers don't breastfeed regularly during the first weeks after birth, their milk production decreases and eventually stops. Once this happens, they become permanently dependent on commercial formula regardless of cost or safety concerns. The 1974 report, The Baby Killer, by Mike Mueller, documented how these practices devastated breastfeeding rates. In Chile, 95% of babies were breastfed in the 1950s. By 1968, after formula marketing arrived, only 10% of infants were breastfed at 2 months. In countries where clean water was scarce and poverty widespread, this forced dependence became a death sentence. The Berkeley study found that infant mortality increased by 19.4 deaths per thousand births among households with unclean water following Nestlé's market entry. Critically, the study found no increase in mortality among households with clean water access, proving that contaminated water was the primary killer. Mothers diluted expensive formula to make it last longer, reducing nutritional content. They mixed powder with contaminated water because clean water wasn't available. They couldn't afford adequate quantities of formula, leading to malnutrition. Babies contracted deadly diarrheal diseases from bacteria in the water. Medical research has consistently shown that breast milk provides optimal nutrition while protecting infants from infections through natural antibodies. This protection is especially crucial in developing countries where contaminated water and poor sanitation increase disease risks. Formula feeding eliminates this natural immune protection precisely when infants need it most. Now, you want to know the exact mechanism that Nestlé used to lock these mothers into dependency. These so-called milk nurses would show up to hospitals in nurse uniforms, and they would offer these mothers free samples for about 2 to 3 weeks. It seems pretty generous, right? But here's what they knew and what makes this so egregious. They knew that after those 2 or 3 weeks, that if a mother is not breastfeeding, her milk dries up. The body stops producing what it thinks it does not need. So by the time these samples ran out, these mothers could not feed their babies because they wasn't producing any breast milk anymore. Their milk was gone. So now they are forced customers, forced to buy this formula, forced to buy a formula that they could not afford and mixing it with unclean water, which was proving to be detrimental to their babies. So the free samples wasn't generous. It was a trap that caused detriment to the mother and was lethal to the hundreds of thousands of babies. The World Health Organization recommends exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life, with continued breastfeeding alongside appropriate complementary foods through the second year. Every major medical organization worldwide supports these recommendations based on decades of research showing that breast milk provides benefits that cannot be replicated in manufactured products. Growing public outrage over infant deaths led to an international boycott of Nestlé, organized in 1977. In 1978, U.S. Senator Edward Kennedy held Senate hearings where he questioned Nestlé's CEO about the company's responsibility for mothers mixing formula with unclean water. The CEO responded that Nestlé had no responsibility. In 1981, the World Health Assembly passed the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes. The WHO code prohibits advertising formula to the public, giving free samples to mothers, promoting formula in healthcare facilities, and making claims that formula is equivalent to breast milk. Nestlé initially refused to comply, but after sustained international pressure, claimed to adopt the standards in 1984. However, violations continued. The boycott was reinstated in 1988 and continues today. Independent monitoring organizations document ongoing WHO code violations by Nestlé across dozens of countries. A 2019 investigation by the Changing Markets Foundation found that Nestlé continued marketing campaigns in developing countries that compared formula favorably with breast milk, explicitly prohibited by the WHO code. Nestlé's own 2019 compliance report documented 107 violations of the code in its global operations. Investigations have found the company sponsors medical conferences, provides free samples in healthcare facilities, and uses social media to promote formula directly to mothers, all violations of international health standards. The total death toll from Nestlé's marketing practices is staggering. The Berkeley study estimates that between 1960 and 2015, approximately 10.9 million infants died as a result of formula marketing by Nestlé in populations without clean water access. To put this in perspective, this is more deaths than many wars and famines. These were preventable deaths caused by marketing campaigns that convinced mothers to abandon feeding practices that would have kept their children alive. The 2016 Lancet Breastfeeding series found that scaling up breastfeeding to near universal levels could prevent 823,000 deaths annually in children under 5 across all countries. While this figure includes all formula marketing by all companies, not just Nestlé, it demonstrates the ongoing global impact of formula marketing on infant survival. Nestlé's infant formula business generates approximately $12 billion annually. This revenue comes from replacing free, naturally designed breast milk with expensive commercial products that medical research proves are inferior and, in environments without clean water, deadly. Despite decades of documented violations and clear evidence linking their marketing to infant deaths, Nestlé faces no meaningful criminal consequences. The company occasionally pays fines and issues policy statements, but continues identical practices with complete impunity. International law provides no mechanism for prosecuting corporations whose marketing practices kill infants. The WHO code carries no enforcement authority, and individual countries often lack resources or political will to prosecute multinational corporations. This regulatory vacuum allows Nestlé to treat infant death as a business externality that doesn't appear on corporate balance sheets. The 10.9 million deaths generate no legal liability, criminal charges, or meaningful financial consequences. While Nestlé's market share has declined from 40% in the 1970s to 22% today, The company remains the world's largest infant formula supplier and continues to be first to enter new markets in developing countries. At the peak of the controversy in 1981, Nestlé's formula marketing was killing 212,000 babies per year. Between 1960 and 2015, an estimated 10.9 million infants died because aggressive marketing convinced their mothers to replace breast milk with formula mixed with contaminated water. This wasn't an accidental tragedy. Internal company documents show Nestlé knew their marketing contradicted medical evidence about breastfeeding benefits, but continued because formula sales generated enormous profits. The company continues violating international health codes today because the financial benefits exceed any regulatory penalties. Infant mortality remains more profitable than infant survival in the formula business. So there you have it. I hope you like this video. I'm going to ask you a small favor. Click that notification bell and like the video and subscribe to my channel so that we can continue to provide this type of content for you. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video. Bye for now.